Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started with a few announcements. Where is it? Here it is. We are recording this echo session for educational and quality improvement purposes. By participating in this session, you are consenting to being recorded. And if you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect from the session. And a little bit about Project Echo. It is a community of practice. We want it to be interactive. We want people to be able to build connections with others, which is one of the reasons we love having people put their contact information in the chat. And we hope that everyone is engaged in asking questions and providing feedback throughout the didactic presentation and the case. The components of an echo session, we will start by hearing from a didactic speaker for about 50 minutes, and then we will have a real situations, real solutions presentation and discussion where we will go into breakout rooms and be able to discuss that and offer our input, and then we will come back into the main group for some debriefing. We do have these few sessions are all based around the workbook Unpacking the Pyramid Model, which I have right here, if you can see. And if you attend, we actually change it. If you attend 2 or more pyramid trainings, we will send you the workbook for free. And I just want to read out the names of everyone who will be getting these books shortly. We have Tara, Tiffany, Mandy, Jordan, Jana, Evelyn, Erica, Emily, Ashley, Andrea, and Aubrey. So we really appreciate you guys coming, and we know this workbook is something that can be really helpful for the pyramid model and teaching it and finding resources, and we really appreciate your support. And so those will be shipped out to all of you today. We also have, every time you attend the echo session, you are entered to win a pyramid model classroom kit. And in the kit, we have things such as Tucker Turtle, the feeling wheel, and then a Super Friend Award. There's a lot of great interactive tools. And since we were halfway through our Unpacking the Pyramid Model sessions, we actually did our first drawing of 2. And so we actually have Jana Adamson, who won the first pyramid model kit. So congratulations, Jana. And we will be sending that to you soon. And we hope you enjoy it because there's a lot of really great resources in there. We ask that you protect individual privacy. When you're sharing information, please use avoiding any real names or initials. De-identify any family members, friends, coworkers, and email addresses and examples and situations. And just a reminder for the hub team, if you could put an asterisk before your name, and if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact me, Faustine, or any of the hub team. We ask that you rename your Zoom profile to your name, your state, and your organization. It's also throughout the presentations. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to raise your hand or put any questions in the chat. We will make sure to read those out loud, and we really enjoy your participation. We highly encourage that everyone pre-registers for the next echo sessions. You'll be able to receive the materials in advance, and I believe we sent the advanced materials out on Friday. So if you want to follow along with the slideshow or any of the resources that Molly will be talking about, you should have that already. And just a reminder, if you are signing up for a meeting, it's really easy for the Zoom invite to get lost in your inbox. So once you register, make sure to add it to your calendar so that way you can have it saved and not forget about it. Everyone that attends and fills out the feedback survey will get a certificate attendance emailed to you. And we really love the survey. We really love hearing your feedback and what we can do better and what's going well and how we can better make this community improve. And so we really appreciate everyone filling out the survey, and we'll make sure to send you that certificate of attendance. We do use Canvas to put out old videos and materials that you can access. If you have any questions or difficulties accessing the Canvas, you can reach out to Faustine at f.sagany@usu.edu. We also have a website that we have the same resources on. So if you just type in USU Project Echo Utah Pyramid Model, it'll pop up with all of those resources as well. For our Real Situations, Real Solutions presentation, if your program or you or a teacher or admin or anyone is struggling with something related to childcare, we would love to have you present and get feedback from everyone. It could be anything such as struggling with staff buy-in ideas or finding time for staff to complete training, Are you a teacher who wants to know how to use a specific tool? Do you need a strategy for a challenging behavior that you've been trying to help with, but it's just not working? If any of that sounds like you, we highly consider that you present a real situations, real solutions presentation. And if you'd like to do that, you can reach out to me or Sue at sue.olson@usu.edu. And just a quick announcement, the Utah Pyramid Model is utilizing a new app called the Goose Chase app. And this is a great resource to get families involved without teachers and admin having to be super involved. But the Goose Chase app, we just have a lot of pyramid model skills that parents can complete with their kids and win points, and we are giving out prizes for that. So if any of your programs would be interested in that, please tell them about the Goose Chase app, and you just go on there and join with the code for parents. And there's a lot of activities in there about what Molly will be talking about today with friendship skills. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out, and we will be getting a page up on our website soon about the app.
Hannah, could I just throw in an extra little thing there? And
Yes.
if you're interested, we have a parent who's a parent engagement specialist with us who would love to meet with you and share about the Goose Chase app and demonstrate it for you. So please let us know if you're interested.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sue. And today for our presenter, we have Molly Milam, and we are very excited to have her here today presenting about friendship skills, and I'll let her give a little introduction. But thank you all for attending, and I will turn the time over to Molly.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Hello, everyone. It's nice to meet you. I am Dr. Molly Milam. You could just call me Molly. So just a little bit of background about me. I currently work at York College of Pennsylvania, kind of, I don't want to say middle, it's sort of near Lancaster, Pennsylvania, if you know where that is, close to the border to Maryland. So there's a lot of students that go to York College that also drive back down to Maryland because it's not that far. Before I was here, I was working with Mary Louise Hemmeter at Vanderbilt University. I do multiple teaching pyramid observation tool trainings a year. So if you guys have had that 2-day intense training, I do that a lot. And I've done 3 or 4 of these Unpacking the Pyramid Model sessions since the book was published. So it's a little bit about me. Everybody can see my screen share, correct? Right? Okay. All right. So let's getting into this. So just first of all, I didn't write the chapter by myself. Lori Meyer and Mickey Ostrowski and I worked on the friendship chapter together. We all have kind of different areas of specialty within teaching friendship skills. Mine is peer mediated stay, play, talk. So we're going to be talking a lot about that during the next session. But again, it's one of those things where it's always, a community that we work together. We want to make sure we're sharing those resources, sharing that information. So Lori and Mickey have been very, very helpful in giving this training previously, and we've developed this training as well as that chapter together. In terms of objectives, these are broader objectives that are for the both sessions, so today and next month. Just in general, the goal is that you're understanding the importance of friendship, what friendship is, why we need to focus on building those friendship skills for the children that we work with, how to actively teach those. And also we're going to be looking at lots of different materials and resources. Hannah mentioned the toolkit. Well, all of those resources are also available for printing out online. So I'm going to show you where those are and how to utilize those within today and next month. Make sure my computer is working here. Just in terms of housekeeping, as Hannah said, if you feel, if you want to actually ask a question, feel free to ask too, but if you want to put it in the chat, you can put it in the chat. I'm going to be watching, and Hannah's going to help me out too in terms of asking questions. There is going to be time at the end, but I'm one of those people that I've kind of gotten to the point of Zoom where if you unmute, I think you're going to ask a question. So I actually watch for people to unmute. I look at it as raising your hand. So I will watch for that as well. So again, feel free to interrupt, ask questions. I think the goal is that if the discussion really tends to bring out more ideas and more perspectives than if I was just talking. So again, please feel free to ask questions throughout, but there will be time at the end. Okay. All right, and hopefully everybody's not surprised at why we're here, right? You got the agenda for the friendship webinar. So just in terms of materials that were sent out, to do just a quick overview, there is a PDF of a checklist for effective friendship practices. So you have this document. All chapters in the Unpacking the Pyramid Model book do have this document at the end of them. So we're going to be I'm going to be talking about different practices, different strategies, they're going to directly relate to this checklist. It's a very helpful resource to determine where you are now, where your team is now, and when, you can look again when you've started implementing practices to then tune into those specific practices that you might need to work on more, just to make sure you're providing all of those resources and those materials for your team and your students. The NCPMI website is very, very helpful. I always Google everything. So challengingbehavior.org is how that comes up. I'm sure you guys have done the first few trainings, so you know where it is. What you might notice, though, is they've changed the website. It's a little bit different in terms of navigation. I think a couple weeks ago it was down for a little while, so I think they were doing the updates then. So we're going to be focusing in when you go to classroom implementation. So you go to pyramid implementation, classroom implementation. That's where a lot of the resources we're going to be talking about are. And I'll show you where some of those are. You can also search everything in that resource library tab. So that's a helpful resource as well. But a lot of it is in implementation, classroom implementation, and practical strategies. That was, I think, moved slightly to a different place. So just kind of keep that in mind, where that navigation is a little bit different. I just noticed it today, so I do think it's a new change in the last week or so of where to find that information on the website. Okay. Specific for today, this session, we're going to be looking at, first of all, what are friendship skills when we're thinking about young kids? How do we actually define friendship skills? We're watching some example videos. Have you guys have discussion about what skills you're seeing students use or not use? We're going to be looking at why we should be teaching friendship skills. So there's evidence that it is very, very beneficial for students now in your classroom, but also there's lifelong effects of teaching friendship skills to young children. We're going to get a little bit into when and how, when we should be focusing on teaching these strategies. And then we are going to get into some strategies, more universal practice strategies this evening, or I guess today. And then next month, we'll get into a little bit more detail in terms of second and that top tier of the pyramid too, in terms of more small group and individualized skills to teach. Okay. All right. My computer's, all right. So first of all, why should we teach friendship skills? So when we think about friendship skills, okay, and a lot of this, I think it might be review, but I think it's really important to look at all the facts of why we should be teaching friendship skills. First of all, when we think about friendship, just for me personally, I've always been interested in why and how students learn how to be friends, right? And these skills. So sometimes you're observing your children in your classroom, you say, okay, well, they're really utilizing strategies that are really cool, and I didn't teach that. Right. So how did they learn that? Right. So there's some kids where they're just picking at it. Do they have siblings? They just naturally are picking up those skills in an easier way. So as a teacher, it was always kind of standing back and watching to figure out how different kids picked up those different friendship skills and learned those. As a researcher, again, my background is on peer mediated interventions and really focusing on friendship. And then even as a professor, it's really interesting when you are talking and teaching others about friendship skills and you're teaching all these different strategies. And then they actually will say, well, I wish somebody would have actually used some of these strategies with me when I was younger, because they struggled to make friends and build those friendships. And so through the whole gamut of my career in different ways, the importance of teaching friendship has come up. When we think about just social emotional skills and friendship, if children do not have those skills, so the social emotional skills, and I'm grouping friendship and problem solving skills, the social problem solving skills together right now, students are more likely to exhibit challenging behavior, right? So if they don't know how to initiate appropriately with a peer, right, maybe they're going to take a toy instead, right? And then that child might try to take that back, and then you have a tug of war with a toy. So there's, a lot of evidence that if we can teach friendship skills, we can reduce that challenging behavior that we see in our classrooms, right? So we don't have to just react to the challenging behavior. We're teaching some important skills. And just in general, it's important that children feel like they belong and they're accepted for who they are. And a lot of that comes down to that culture of friendship and that community that you've built in your classroom. So we want to make sure we're teaching those skills so everybody feels like they are part of that community and part of that group of friends in their classroom. And so again, builds on lots of different skills, but the goal is that we are promoting the helpfulness, cooperation, all these foundational skills that children need really throughout their lives, right? You have college students who are like, okay, well, you wish you were taught friendship skills. Well, when did you teach those? Or do you still feel like you are part of a friendship community, right? So it can carry through lifelong, okay? All right, just a little bit more data too, in terms of data driven, some research behind this. Some articles are posted. So both Meyer and Ostrowski, Odom's article is posted as one of the resources. When we think about teaching friendships and friendships in general, if children have friends, they're gonna have increased self-confidence. They're gonna have more academic success in school because they're able to work with other people and actually learn from other people. So again, it's not just helping their social emotional development, it's going to be helping their academic skills, those positive relationships they're building throughout their lives. And so again, it's impacting multiple areas of a child's life, not just that friend that they now know how to interact with. Some students will learn these naturally, as I said, where it's just they have siblings, they're picking up on skills really, really quickly. Maybe they need a little bit of help with one skill when it comes up that's more difficult, right? But there's other students who need that explicit instruction, explicit teaching. And that's where a lot of us, if you were to go back and think about how you learn friendship skills, maybe you don't remember either. So then it gets harder to teach because you don't know how it was taught to you because you didn't maybe need it taught to you, or it's been a long time. I always equate it to teaching reading. If you are just a natural reader, picked up reading really easily, you probably don't remember how you learned how to read. But if you were a struggling reader, you probably remember all of those additional things that you had to do to pick up those reading skills. So again, we have to be making sure we're focusing on those students who need more attention, need more focused interventions, so that we can support them. And then those outcomes later in life are going to be impacted again, both socially and the future relationships that they're going to have, but also academically. Okay. All right, so just one more reason why we should be teaching friendship skills. There is a Division for Early Childhood, so that Council for Exceptional Children. There's a NACCE joint statement that focuses on teaching friendship skills. So an ever-increasing number of infants and young children with and without disability play, develop, and learn together in a variety of places: homes, early childhood programs, neighborhoods, and other community-based settings. We must promote a sense of belonging for every child. Okay, so that sense of belonging for every child really comes down to that culture of friendship and building that within your classroom and helping students develop those skills that they need to develop those friendships. Some students, it might be a daycare setting, it might be preschool. Maybe they're next year in kindergarten are going to have a whole new friend group that they get to know. But the goal is that we're giving them the skills that they need to be able to form those friendships later. Some students, they're going through, if they're in more of a private setting, they're going through pre-K all the way through middle school, maybe with the same group of kids. So we want to make sure that we're setting up that culture early for them and giving them the skills so they feel confident and comfortable in interacting with their friends. There is a resource, and this is linked. It's a short article, but what's nice about this is it's a really good starting point for discussion with your team, with other people in your program, that really gets into why we need friends. So you're not just sharing slides with them, but you actually have a resource for them. So this again is a really nice article suggestion. So it's not too long to share with your colleagues that might want to know more. Questions so far? Okay. All right. So what is friendship? Okay. And I think you notice I'm also a behavior analyst, right? So it's one of those things where what is that concrete definition of friendship skills? We want to make sure we are defining this in a way where we can actually then measure if students are growing in those areas that we're teaching them. And so when we think about what friendship is, really it comes down to there's kind of these two main pieces, right? And still these, I think, are broad, right? So we still need to break this down even more. But, how can we determine two children are friends? So the first question we have to ask ourselves is, do both children seem to like each other? Is there some sort of reciprocal relationship? And with younger children that you see on a playground, for example, they might be not to the point where it's like reciprocal, but my kids were always the ones that were following and shadowing. I have a 7-year-old and 9-year-old, so a little bit older now, but it'd be like, okay, he's really like, he's that kid's shadow, right? So it's not necessarily reciprocal yet, but it's still, at some point, the goal would be that it's going to be more reciprocal. Both children seem to want to like each other. They want to be around each other. They have similar interests. And again, the goal is that we're moving towards a voluntary relationship. Okay, so sometimes when we're practicing skills, we're going to talk about strategies that you pair students together really intentionally to practice a skill. But when we're thinking about what friendship is, those kids should be choosing to play with each other and they should like to play with each other. So that choice should be something that forms where they're gonna tend to want to play with that friend that they've created. Because there's friendship skills, and then there's actually friendship. And friendship then is a longer process, but the goal is if we can teach friendship skills, it's going to lead to those friendships down the road. Right. So keep having, okay, there we go. I was like, there should be something coming up here that's with this. Okay, so we're going to watch 2 videos. And again, when we're done with the videos, you can volunteer and unmute. You can put something in the chat. But what we're going to look for are one video is kids that might be having a little bit trouble interacting. Another video is a little bit better examples of what that friendship looks like. So what skills think about while you're watching the video, what skills are children using or not using that might be missing related to friendship. Okay, questions before I play this video. I hope it plays. I kind of wonder, didn't skip anything. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so that's one example. Let's watch another one. It's just going to keep playing it again. Here we go. Should be a different one here.
I bet we make it like this. Probably we can make it be covered like this. No, how about we do it like this? Put those together and put these like this.
Okay, so again, these are really short clips, but what are some friendship skills, or maybe some friendship skills you saw missing in that first video that those children were displaying or might have been missing? You guys think? You can put it in the chat, you can unmute. What do we think?
I feel like in the second one, there was a lot more, they were actually talking and playing together. It was interpersonal communication instead of just being next to each other.
Yeah, they were in Amy and Chelsea, they put some similar things in there. Where in the second video, we saw them making suggestions, they were giving play ideas, they were basically thinking through what they were going to do before they did it, right? Janice put in here, not asking or talking. So in that first video, right, they weren't asking each other. There was communication, but the communication was reactive to that block being taken, right? So we didn't have like advanced organizing of play, developing strategies. So again, so I think thinking through like those different situations, they're similar, or they're both in blocks. But in one example, you saw two students that if you were to see that repeated over time where they're playing together, you kind of say, okay, they're friends, right? They're able to have that relationship. They're actually talking to each other. They're planning what they're going to play in advance. That first video that we can see when it is missing, what that can look like, right? There's now an issue with sharing, and there's some challenging behavior occurring. So the goal is we can teach these friendship skills, then we're going to see more videos like number 2. Okay, so number 1 is usually a teacher would be stepping in then to say, okay, wait a second, right? But let's teach those skills that students need to be successful. Sorry, did not mean to play that again. So just looking in general, some broad categories related to friendship skills. Problem solving is on here, but I'm not going to be getting into problem solving because it is something that's going to be covered in your next round of sessions. But problem solving refers to social problem solving, communication, and interactions with adults, with others, with other children, with peers. We're going to be focusing more on those friendship skills related to interaction and communication. So when we think about interactions, just think about sharing and taking turns, right? When you have a room of 1.5, 2-year-olds, those sharing skills are just developing, right? So you're probably going to have multiple items of the same toy. But when we get into 3, 4, 5-year-olds, that sharing becomes a big aspect of what those friendship skills and strategies we're going to be focusing on are. So again, it's asking a friend verbally to share. It's giving a friend a requested item that they've actually asked for, offering a friend an item, right? So handing something without even being asked, taking those turns. So, if we're going to build, let's take turns instead of one student building, one watching, giving a friend a turn if it's a turn-taking game. So again, it ends up being a lot of that back and forth, that reciprocal communication, reciprocal interactions with each other in that interaction as they're seeing it. We saw that video of them initiating and organizing play. The second video is a good example of that. And it's really neat when you do start seeing younger students that are delving into that more. Okay, so this is another example of what this looks like. What I want you to think about though with this video is, how is this child trying to initiate play? Okay, so let's look at some of those strategies this child's trying to use. Okay. So I don't think we need to watch the whole thing, but it looks like somebody was having issues with sound. Was everybody having issues with sound? Oh no. Okay, could you see what was happening? Okay, so what we're seeing though is you have these two kids that are playing pretty well together, and then you have a third little boy who's attempting to initiate play. And so as we can see, there's appropriate ways to initiate play, and then some that are not so appropriate. So even him coming up and banging the car up against the house, that was his attempt at initiating play. Okay, so as an adult, like we might pick up on that and say, okay, yes, like he's trying to get my attention, I'm going to play. But the reaction his peers are giving him, because they're not liking that, is more negative, right? So they don't really want to interact with him. They're kind of getting him to go away a little bit, instead of actually taking that initiation attempt and then utilizing that to then have that communicate in that interaction. And so what we have to think about is, okay, what are those initiation strategies that students are using right now? Because if we're looking at those, it can help us determine who they want to play with, what they want to play with, and we can go from there and build our strategies too. So again, let's hope, I think that's a little bit longer of a video, so maybe hopefully we won't have trouble with this one. Okay, so getting into communication. So this gets into initiating and responding. So we think about turn taking, but we can do this verbally, we can do it we can do it non-verbally. So how do you teach a child to get a friend's attention? So we just saw an example of him banging and hitting things, right? But what are some ways that we need to have students do that even if they're nonverbal? So it can be tapping a friend's shoulder, taking a friend's hand gently, saying their friend's name. Those are all skills that we want to teach, and make sure that we're teaching those appropriate skills for initiation. So then we don't have those situations where a peer just wants them to go away because they're trying to initiate inappropriately. Okay. In terms of responding, right? It's again, knowing then like when to respond. So you're waiting for that other person to stop talking before you respond verbally, and having that back and forth conversation. Again, some students need more assistance with that than others, but again, the goal is that we're helping students move more towards what does that appropriate look like for that age group. Okay. Okay. Here it's really quick, so I'm hoping it works. It's like a 10-second video. We'll see. 9
Today
seconds.
is Wednesday. Find the yellow pants.
Yellow.
Yellow. Good job.
She's a smart boy.
He is a smart boy. Today is Wednesday.
So I don't know if
Today
this
is
is
Wednesday.
okay,
Find
keeps
the
playing.
yellow pants.
Just trying to go to the next one. All right. So again, that's what's cool about that video is, did you hear him? He said, I mean, he got the pronouns right. It's like, she's a nice boy, right? So it was like he instead of he, but it's a very good compliment, right? So again, it comes down to, how do you actually give compliments to other people? And it's cool when young kids are giving compliments to each other. You feel good when somebody compliments you. So we can teach that as a strategy too, to help students then learn those friendship skills with other people. Okay. All right. So just in terms of listing some, right? So we give suggestions, play organizers, sharing. Again, that's a hard one, but we get that reciprocity, that back and forth, that turn taking as we develop more and more friendship skills. Are affectionate towards each other, so that can come out in terms of hugs, but also using kind words with each other, giving compliments. It's also, and this gets a little bit more into that problem solving piece, but understanding when somebody's upset. When you think about that emotional literacy and being able to actually check in, give an apology if apology is needed, but really how do we respond to other people's emotions? And that was a different session. We're not going to get into that much today, but it is part of that as well, because that empathy piece is really important, and having somebody know that they understand you is really important. And again, responding, maintaining initiations with their peers. What's hard about this is when we think about strategies, a lot of times we have to embed ourselves as the adults into that conversation first, but then we really want to quickly, hopefully, turn a lot of that communication, a lot of that responsibility over to the students in our classroom, so that they can we're not disrupting that communication and that interaction between peers. Because a lot of times if we insert ourselves, all the kids stop what they're doing to look at us. So what can we do then to build that so it's more natural than us having to insert ourselves into a situation? And so there's strategies that are more beneficial than others related to that. But again, the goal is we all want to understand what we want to teach, what we need to teach before we get into how to teach it. Okay. Right. All right. There we go. All right. So again, just thinking through developmentally when we should be teaching friendship skills. What you're going to note, and this is a big table, it's a lot of information on it. So you have, but this is adapted from Barton article 2014. So when you think about the different ages, so it's 0 to 12, 12 to 18, 18 to 24, 24 to 36. A lot of the skills focus on these, especially with these younger ages, relationship with caregivers first. And so when we think about that, a lot of us might probably learned friendship skills and learned these social skills from our parents, right? Or from the important adults in our lives, those caregivers, those adults that are adult teachers. And then it slowly starts to move more towards this relationship with peers. And so when we think about 24 to 36 months, that's when they really are starting to play, share, take turns with adult support. Right. And so we think about that. Even kids that are 3 years old, they're going to need that adult support. We can just be like, hey, I taught you this, now to go do it, right? They still need that feedback from us and that close monitoring from us. But really when we get to 48, 60 months, that's when we should be seeing students actually start to form the preferred friends that they want to play with. So the goal is that we are making sure that everybody has an opportunity to get to know everybody in the classroom as they get a little bit older. So then, they have more preferred friends that they're maybe more likely to play with. Again, those social emotional skills, it is a lot reliant on adults, but then we move more towards that independent use of information and use of those strategies that we've taught as students get older. Okay. Again, this should not be new information, but just in general, when we think about, how are children learning in general, we need to know where they are. So is this a brand new skill for them? And I need to be started, and I need to look at this as a new skill concept. I'm going to teach it right from the ground up. I'm going to make sure I'm offering practice. Or is it something that they know how to use, but they're not yet using it fluently, right? Which means maybe I can actually use this when I'm calm, but as soon as this situation gets I'm a little bit anxious, I can't use it anymore, right? So it's not fluent yet. So we want to make sure, they just need more practice? Is it brand new? Also, are they going to continue using it over time, right? So the goal is we start to fade and take away our support that we're providing. Are they continuing to use that without us even there? In that video we watched, the two boys actually doing that advanced organizer, what they're going to build. They were using a skill that had been taught to them, and they were continuing to use it without an adult there, right? So it's really neat to see that it was not adult having to insert herself or himself into the situation to maintain that relationship between the two students. And then that generalization too, are they able to use it outside of the areas you've taught it in? So we want to be thinking through where students are, because again, if it's brand new, we need to make sure we're providing that support across the board, and we need to be teaching them explicitly how to use it. If it's more fluency, maintenance, generalization, then it's offering practice in a variety of settings, or practice over time with less help from us, for example. Okay. We also need to make sure that we're keeping in mind, and hopefully this, when we think about challenging interactions, when we have this situation where the student is getting a little bit, something's going on where they're getting excited about something, that challenge behavior is peaking, not a great time to teach skills, right? So if we're thinking about teaching a new skill, we should be teaching that skill before any situation even occurs. Right? If they're trying to initiate to a friend, if there's a situation where we're having trouble sharing, we're not going to use that moment to teach that new skill, right? We should be doing lessons. We should be implementing strategies well before that. Okay. if a child actually knows how to use those skills, but you see something starting to happen, then it's a reminder of, hey, it's more fluency. Hey, remember, we practiced this. This is what we need to do, right? So kind of priming them a little bit. But no matter what, kind of when we get to that highest peak, maybe not the greatest time to focus on that skill yet, right? The goal is if we can teach it ahead of time, teaching it beforehand, we're able to remind them, we're not going to, then the goal is that we don't get even to this red, right? Let's hit them before they, not hit them, but let's provide those strategies, let's provide those reminders before they get to that point. It doesn't get to that point, and then it's going to continue on. And really the goal is let's keep it all flatlined at green, because now they know how to use all these strategies that we've been teaching. So just something to keep in mind in terms of when and how to teach. Okay. Questions about any of this information? Okay. All right, so just getting into some strategies. So as a reminder, we have our pyramid, okay? When we think about pyramid, we have these universal promotion strategies for all children. I'm assuming you've seen the pyramid multiple times through these trainings that you've come, if you've come to them before. So when we think about that and think about even the practices we're going to be talking about today, we have to, there's going to be students that are going to just know these strategies really well. They're going to be able to implement them. But the goal is that we are implementing strategies universally for students. And so there's different strategies we're going to talk about that are universal. But then there's some students who need a little bit more, right? So maybe that read aloud that talked about sharing isn't enough, right? So we need to provide some small group instruction. That small group instruction might not be enough, and that's when we need to go towards more of a targeted intervention where we actually have a behavioral goal related to friendship skills, where we actually have a matrix for that student across the day where we have identified specific times that we're going to support that student in practicing those skills. So we're moving more towards those universal, we're going to implement them with everybody, up to that top of the pyramid where there's a few students who need a little bit more. When we think about the pyramid too, you guys had, the creation of supportive environments was where you guys started. That needs to be in place, right? To build on that foundation and then focus on those specific friendship skills. All right, so the practices that are numbered here relate to that checklist I showed at the beginning of one of those materials. So practice number 1 is just knowing friendships. Okay, so it's really about assessing where students are right now through observation, asking them about their friendships, asking family members, asking your team of teachers who they've seen children play with. But the goal is we need to figure out where they are right now, who needs more support, who really needs like intensive support. And so we can provide that to students who need it. So when we're getting into, is it reciprocal, really gets down to, are they actually are both children approaching each other and wanting to play? Or does it seem like it's more one-sided? Even if it's one-sided though, if you make note of who that one child who might need a little bit extra help is gravitating towards and following around, even though it's not reciprocal now, that peer is probably going to be a good motivator to use, right? And actually practice those skills that you want to teach with. So again, even if it's not reciprocal, you want to be noting who they are playing with or who they are following around so that you can build on that later. Again, getting into both children liking each other. Do they have similar interests around this age? Or do they like the same things, right? And sometimes that involves talking to the family. Like, what do they like to do at home? What do they like to play with? What are their favorite shows? And so you can actually, if you know that information about all your students, you can be more intentional how you're grouping students together. You also need to be thinking about, again, that voluntary piece. When you're first getting to know students, when they're first learning skills, sometimes, in terms of teaching strategies, it may not be voluntary when you pair students together, but you also then want to have students able to choose some partners sometimes so they can actually choose that play partner and form those longer term relationships. And again, we want to be thinking about, are we to the point where this relationship is uninfluenced by other adults, other peers? Like, is there a friendship that's formed here? So again, you can observe throughout the day. You can ask students, have a conversation. Who do you like to play with? Who do you play with during free time outside, during free time inside? What do you guys play? But if you have students that, are a little bit quieter, have lower verbal skills, asking families, what do they like? What do they talk about when they're at home? Who do they talk about? Who do they play with at home? Sometimes it's really good information to know whether they have siblings or not that are older siblings. Are they close enough in age where they actually want to play with them? Or is it, okay, there's a 6-year age gap, so really they don't have anybody to play with at home. So again, thinking through really utilizing your resources in your team, again, which includes the family, which includes that teaching team as well. Okay. First thing, seems like okay, it's nothing, shouldn't be a new idea, but it's also one of those things where there's some skills that I've not seen adults in the hundreds of observations I've done in classrooms doing teapots where I haven't seen adults use them. Even though we understand and we know the importance of modeling, we have to make sure that our interactions with adults in the classroom are setting a good example for the children that we're teaching. Okay, so we need to make sure that our tone of voice, we're sharing, we're responding to in appropriate ways, because those models are essential for friendship skills. We don't know what models the children are having at home, right? Is it a single parent family? Is there are they seeing a lot of siblings fighting? So we want to make sure that we're providing those really important models for them. Even just giving a team member a compliment. That's what I was talking about. I have been very few observations in classrooms over the years where I've actually seen a teacher give another teacher a compliment, which just seems like such a small thing, but it's really important. If we want students to give compliments to each other, then they should actually be giving compliments, like we should be giving compliments to each other. It's really important for building relationships. I don't see it very often, right? And I don't know if teachers think we're just acting. Well, we shouldn't be acting. We should just being nice to each other too, and forming that team and friendship within our classrooms as well. So again, it's modeling, but usually especially at the beginning, you want to model and actually point out explicitly what happened. Did you see that? Right? I needed help and I asked her. And so you actually kind of you reflect on that so they can see you reflecting on why you did what you did, right? Be explicit, be specific, and follow up with that, that example. Yes, Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as I've been talking with different teachers about this, the teachers are like, oh, well, we meet on Fridays and we do like a recap of our day or what went well. That they haven't connected, like, oh my gosh, it's important for a child to be able to hear us say, like, oh, how did that go? Or that was really great. That just even letting them know. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know, or we don't realize that. It's been very insightful for me to have these conversations with teachers about, yes, I know you plan, and that's for adults, but what are we doing for our children to show this, these examples of things?
Yeah, it's a good point. And we don't think about it. I think it's like, oh, it's a well-oiled machine. We don't need to talk to each other. But then we're basically modeling not talking to each other for a good portion of the day, which is strange when you think about it, right? We need to be talking to each other. It's similar to if there's a schedule change, right? Like we make that decision and kids just have to go along with it. But really, they should be involved in the conversation too, that problem-solving piece. So again, it's making sure that we are doing that and then explaining. And it might be that you just like with kids, you take a minute to notice who's actually giving compliments. You bring it up in whole group later. You say, I saw so-and-so give a compliment. And did you guys hear I gave Amy a compliment when she actually picked up the blocks for me, even though I didn't ask, right? So you can actually bring those situations back to a whole group situation later too. Okay. All right. So I don't know if you guys know about the book list. Has anybody talked about the children's book list in other trainings yet? Maybe looks familiar. Okay, so this is linked in the resources. It's still available on the NCP my website. I think it's housed in a different place. But what's awesome about this book list is there is a whole section on being a friend, right? And they even split it up. You guys did you guys see when I changed to the change screens? Yeah, okay. Can close this though. But it even has nice ages. So like kind of that age range that it's appropriate for. And I will say too, a lot of these are books that potentially are already in the libraries within your classrooms. And then it's one of those things, well, I didn't really think about that in terms of that's a good way to teach social skills. I always love their, which one was it? I can't find it. So I can't remember which one it is now. But again, this is not an all-inclusive list, but I think it's a good resource. And so it's important to kind of be utilizing those resources. But what I will say too is utilize the conversations that come up, even though you aren't expecting it to. Okay, so I was reading The Good Egg to my daughter and she's like, well, he's not being a very good friend. And it was like, oh, why do you think he's not being a very good friend? And what's going on? And why aren't they being a good friend to him? And so even if books aren't directly related to it, follow those conversations and really have a longer discussion about those friendship skills. If students go in that direction, take advantage of those conversations you can have, because there's visuals already. You don't have to make anything, right? You're just having a discussion about what's happening within the book. That resource is really helpful because it's a good starting point, and I would guarantee you at least have 5 of those books related to friendship skills in your libraries, right? If not, and somebody says, hey, would you like me to purchase some books from your classroom? It's a good resource list to provide so you actually can get those books as well. Okay. All right. I don't think we have time for that. So we're going to do this. So raise your hand if you've heard of the book nooks that are available on the NCPMI website. Few people. Okay. All right. So and this is one of the things that they moved. So I'm going to go to the next slide real quick. So if you, nope, it's not there. There it is. So if you look now, it's still under practical strategies, but they have a whole lot more drop downs. And so at the very, very bottom, they do have that resource for book nooks. And so just kind of keep in mind, it did move. It's teaching social emotional skills. It's way down at the bottom. They don't have these alphabetical. Not sure why they chose the order they did, but just keep in mind that it is there. But what's cool about the book nook, I'm gonna go back here, is it provides a book idea, right? But then it actually has at least a week's worth of activities that you can build into your different centers, different aspects of that encourages the book to be read multiple times during the week, and actually gives different ideas and different things to focus on within each book as you do each read. And so it is one of those things that, oh, I want to change up my center. Well, here's an idea to change up your center. There's art activities, there's music activities. So it really depends on which one, but there's a lot of different resources that they've developed for you to be able to actually practice these skills. I always say, work smarter, not harder. Well, here you go. Instead of getting a book and saying, well, what can I do with this book? They've done it for you. Okay. So again, there's a lot of different books available. I think they're developing them ongoing. So it's not like the list is ever finalized, but again, utilize those resources that are available for you. And some of them even have materials attached to them and visuals attached to them that you can just print out. And so then they all go along with that book and that theme related to friendship. So again, this would be I can share. Okay. Yeah. So I think, Ingrid, in response to your question, I'm pretty sure they're coming up with more as they're going. But yeah, I think I've actually had students as an activity create book nooks. So if you need some ideas for your team, it's one of those things you're like, hey, what book would you want to do? And then you always have those resources year after year to utilize too, which is neat. Okay. All right. So when we think about books, right? Very natural way. We do a lot of read alouds in our classrooms, but then we also want to be thinking kind of universal practices related to intentional interaction. So this article is posted. It's one of the DC recommended practices monograph series number 5, but it really gets into what those responsive relationships and those responsive approaches from adults should look like, and helping facilitate those peer interactions. So again, I think it's a good list. It's a good article, and it is linked on the resource page. Okay. So I want to watch this real quick for an intentional interaction.
So,
If you start having issues with sound, just give me a thumbs down, and I can explain it, what's happening in the video. Okay.
what did you say? Children, did you hear this? Espera, Stephanie.
Thank you, buddy.
So you're saying that if you can take turns, then everybody will be happy?
Quick, go.
Espera, Stephanie.
Do you like the crafts on it now?
So first you take a turn, then Stephanie takes a turn? First it's Stephanie, then Cesar, then Juan Moon, and then Soja? That is a great solution. Gail,
What's going on?
these guys just came up with a great solution.
What did they do?
Well, there was a problem because all the parts.
Okay, so just in terms of time, I'm gonna kind of, they move into, here's a friendship, like they actually had the super friends and the kid gets the cape and everything if they're coming up with the idea. But the idea here is, sometimes you see this interaction happening and you have an adult come over and say, well, you take a turn and then it's your turn and then it's your turn. But here's a situation where it's like, actually, let's get them talking. And again, it kind of gets in that problem solving piece, but it's also really intentional around that friendship and that sharing piece. So it's like, have that conversation, help them understand why, and if it works, and, really talk about and make a big deal about students that you see interacting in ways that you've been focusing on and implementing those strategies that you have been teaching for a while, so that they actually understand, they're getting that feedback that that is what they're expected to do. And other peers then are seeing that as well. And then they have those peer models to follow as in addition to the adult.
So
I don't know why it keeps playing again. I'm sorry. Okay. So just kind of a few more minutes. One of them is, and again, we can use this universally if we have students that might be having a little bit of trouble and we're noticing it, but they don't need like a big plan. Sometimes just a simple priming a student within that interaction can be really beneficial. So it might be that during one specific situation, you notice that a student has trouble. So in this example, it's a tricycle, so it's outside on the playground. You practice that. Priming means you're practicing in advance. You're practicing, you're talking through it, you're actually role playing with the student. And then when they're about to go outside, you say, hey, remember how we practiced this? This is what you need to do when you go outside. And then you stay close to that, you provide that feedback to students so that they actually have that practice in the real situation with your feedback, with your encouragement. And so it's a matter of, again, tuning into what those little situations might be that students need a little bit extra help, and then utilizing and teaching that and role playing with them so they have that as an example. Okay. So when we get into environmental strategies, kind of those intentional, those program-wide strategies, really comes down to how can we arrange the environment to actually encourage that partnering with students. So even in this example, if I have books and I have two seats set up, right? The students actually then, just the fact that they're actually at a table that only has 2 chairs, the goal is that they're going to interact more with each other. Okay, so we can intentionally arrange the environment for students so they actually have that increased opportunity to practice those skills. Okay, we talked about grouping a little bit, but a lot of times I think when we are as teachers think about grouping, we're thinking about grouping in terms of which students shouldn't sit next together because they're just going to talk. Well, that's counter to actually forming friendships if you think about it. What we really want to do at this age to encourage friendships is give them the time to learn from each other, interact with each other. Yes, you can focus on some of those behavioral strategies of like, remember, this is what these behavioral expectations are, but we don't want to put like restrictions on those friendship conversations and opportunities either. So again, we really want to get into making sure that we are intentionally grouping and not just in grouping based on behavior. Okay, so we know these students like to play together. Let's group them together so they can practice those friendship skills, form that relationship. Hey, I have a student that's a little bit higher. I know they're higher socially. Let's pair them with somebody that is working on these initial strategies, and it's going to allow them to engage in more practice related to the skills. So again, I think it comes down to knowing where students are, knowing their interests, knowing who they like to play with, so then you can actually make those arrangements with students. Oh, okay, sorry. Just real quick, one more in terms of environmental strategies. We get into classroom materials and centers. And so we think about knowing again what those shared interests are, using materials for partner play. So again, at certain ages, you do want to have more than one material. But when we move into 3, 4, 5-year-old classrooms, intentionally have one type of material, so then you're actually practicing playing together. Again, inside and outside the classroom, you can set these things up where it's encouraging that turn taking and encouraging that sharing. Again, some students need specific support, encouragement, but the goal is that you're intentionally pairing students together. You're intentional with your materials. This What Works brief is really beneficial and I think helpful for your teaching team. It is linked as well on the page. And then one more here is in terms of classroom activities, cooperative activities. So a lot of times how many classrooms have jobs? Well, assign them a job together. So they actually have to work together to finish that job, right? So it's little things we can change. Give them projects where they actually have to work with another peer to actually build that project. Okay? The friendship can is actually, we draw names when we're calling on students, but why can't we draw names and say, hey, walk with so-and-so to the class, to library today, right? Or I want you to pick a center with so-and-so today, and that's your starting center. So again, it's not, hey, drawing a name to respond, but actually you're getting students access to other kids in the classroom that they might not have been able to interact with before. Okay, and they might not have wanted to, or they might not have known that they could interact with that other individual. So again, it's giving them practice with multiple peers, not just one. Friendship activities, it's one of those things where we can change things slightly to then practice social skills. So if you're happy and you know it, well, give high five, say hello, right? Give a compliment. So you can build those strategies into the songs. The musical hula hoop's a little bit different because instead of taking away a chair, you're actually just the hula hoop stays, but now you have to join a peer in the hula hoop, right? And you can actually say, okay, and give a compliment, right? Or say hi or give high five. So you can actually build practice of skills within these different activities. And again, it is one of those things that any game, if you really are creative enough, you can come up with different ideas for how those students can then utilize those different activities and to practice different skills that you're focusing on. Okay. Okay, so I'm a little bit behind, but it's 3:55 my time. Anybody have any questions? And again, next time we're going to get into more of those secondary small group practices and those like intentional individualized practices as well. Does anybody have any questions about the practices that I covered today so far?
I don't have questions per se, but I just want to comment and say you did such a good job with this. But I think in our education systems, we forget how important this is in helping our students, especially with our 3 to 5 population. We just assume that kids are good at making friends, and they are not. Some are not, and some really struggle. And so I feel like sometimes we just forget how important this skill is in our early childhood settings. But you did such a great job at explaining it. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always it's still hard to believe when you hear about like preschool students, pre-K students being expelled and suspended for behavior, because it's one of those things where how many times is it because the situation, like they don't know how to share, right? They haven't been taught the skills that they need, right? They see other friends playing together and they just want to join them, and then they throw a toy and hit somebody, right? So it's something that, and I will say, even I think elementary classrooms should be teaching friendship skills more explicitly, right? It would look different, even middle school, high school, but we have students in high school that, you know, it's very, very socially isolated, right? Questions, comments?
I just appreciated your training as well. And I liked just thinking about it in a different perspective of how the adults in the class need to be complimenting each other. I like that a lot. Want to take that back to our district.
Yeah, and I will say now you're going to watch for it and you're not going to see it. And it's going to be very sad, right? Because when you start to really look for it, you notice it's missing. Questions? Okay, so just as a reminder, the next session is on March 25th. So we're going to be looking at kind of more peer mediated interventions. I have some video examples for Stay Play Talk. That's my research background. And we're also going to be looking at some of those individualized strategies as well. Okay.
Thank you so much, Molly. I think it's really interesting to see how much that friendship is a skill that you have to work on and practice, especially with those young kids, kind of like Debbie was saying. So thank you so much. And we're excited to see you next month.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
We are now going to move over to our real situations, real solutions portion of the meeting. And I believe we are up with Jana. So let me pull up your presentation. And Jenna, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, all right. You just want me to get started?
Yes, so you can go ahead and explain the situation.
Okay, so I'm Jana. I'm from Duchesne County School District. I'm a preschool coach and I support 7 teachers and 15 aides. And it's just been a great journey. This is my first year getting to be a full-time coach. In the past, I've taught special ed and was the coach at the same time. So it's nice to just be able to be the coach this year. The setting that I'm going to talk about where we've got a challenging situation is in an elementary school. It serves children from preschool to 5th grade. And the preschool classroom has anywhere from 10 to 12 students in it and age 3 to 5. And the lead teacher has earned a CDA certificate. She has 2 aides working under her. And they have more typical students than they have special ed students that are receiving special education. And they come from, some of the students come for 4 days a week and a couple come for 2 days a week. And it's a 3-hour day for them. And so just getting started, this is just definitely a situation in a minute that I'll present that is a hot button for me and something that I hope to get some of your insight on. So the lead teacher has been in our program for almost 5 years. She previously worked in a private church preschool. And like I mentioned, she has her CDA. On a district level, because our preschool coordinator is actually a principal of a different school, it's unclear who oversees the preschool program on that administrative level. So we have 4 different sites where the preschool is in 4 different elementaries. And again, our preschool coordinator is only in one of those sites. Okay, if you want to move on. Okay, so the concern and the problem really is that the teacher needs more buy-in to our program. And even though we've had 4 years of her being the lead teacher and 1 as an aide, she's constantly discussing how she likes her old job better. And it really kind of feels like she has a negative attitude and prefers to do things her way. And it's hard for her to have other people tell her what to do. And again, as I'm presenting, this person really is a nice teacher. I don't want to put her in a bad light. It's just a situation that's been challenging for me. She has several students with challenging behaviors, and this has really made her feel overwhelmed. She started off the school year without a few of these children, but one of our new teachers had a bunch of kids that we didn't realize had some more challenging behaviors. And so their admin did switch a few children into her class. And so she did get to pick the kids she wanted to have in her class, but ever since, she just has struggled with their behaviors and this overwhelming feeling that she's had this year in particular. It's hard for her to see herself as the part of the problem. She just wants to put the blame on the children. She does complain and make excuses. The biggest issue is that not keeping that consistent schedule. And I think that contributes to the classroom being a little off with challenging behaviors when you don't have a consistent schedule. And her aides report that sometimes she disappears out of the classroom. It's like she needs a break and she just disappears. And that's really not what we should be doing. We have provided her with a lot of training. That's what's great, being part of an Eckers program, being part of a preschool program and special ed, and the fact that we get to be a part of this wonderful pyramid behavior model is our teachers and aides are getting a lot of training and support. And she also gets support from me and just her coworkers. So the tricky part is when we offer a teaching strategy for her to try, she'll either say that she's already done it or it won't work with her students. And this year in particular, her aides have started to complain about how the classroom is going, and they feel burned out and feel like they have to do more than they should. And even like the teacher in the next classroom next to her she comes over and complains to her a lot, and that's kind of bringing her down. And even our special education teacher, that's our itinerant teacher, feels discouraged because the schedule in that classroom isn't kept. And so when she comes in to work with students, she'll think they're going to be in a small group situation or a learning situation part of the day, learning centers, and they're not. So that's really been tricky for people. The principal at the school does know about the problem, but he hasn't dealt with it. He feels like it's the preschool coordinator's job. And there's, again, what I said earlier, it's just that we don't have that clear picture of who's doing what when it comes to the admin side. Right, thank you. You want to move forward? Yep, appreciate it. So just some additional information about the teacher. Again, I told you she did have to take on some challenging behaviors that she didn't start out with from another class, but she also had her husband have some health issues at the beginning of the year, and that was stressful for her. And recently her grandfather passed away. And because of those things, and then just life in general and the challenging behaviors, her emotions have been all over the place. She feels like she wants more support from the principal and preschool coordinator. And sometimes feels like, she wants them to help deal with these challenging behaviors more. But what I've been able to help line up for her is we have in our district, we have a really well-knowledged professional that's a behavior specialist. And so she's been able to be in the classroom, and she helps with a few of the students and has put some strategies in place for them, and has been a resource and spends a lot of time in the classroom. And so do I, helping with the challenging behaviors. This behavior specialist, it's hard for her because, again, she gets the pushback when she offers suggestions from the teacher as well. And I was able to line up, we have a school counselor now at that school who teaches some social emotional lessons to little groups of children. And she's working with some of those students as well. So we feel like, even though this teacher might feel like the principal and the preschool coordinator haven't given her enough support, there are these things in place that we're really lucky to have with that behavior specialist and that school counselor. And as I mentioned before, like that hot button, it's hard for me, and I've worked with her for many, many years. This is the 5th, is just the part that's hard for me is when people don't follow the required parts of a program and have that buy-in. And that makes it really difficult for me to coach her now, as that lack of doing some of the things that we've been trained on that I know would help her if she would follow through with them. Okay, thank you. And so I have a few questions to put out there for you guys that we can talk about and discuss. And just wonder if any of you have ever coached an adult like this, and what strategies that you have tried in the past that have worked to help someone who may lack the buy-in to a program and then has that inconsistent schedule and the classroom management pieces missing. And then what else can I do in a small rural district? These are admin and me, other coworkers, we wear multiple hats. So what else can I do to help in this classroom for the students to have a better environment to be in, where their their challenging behaviors can be managed better? What can I do to help them and the aides and this teacher's other coworkers before admin gets involved? And those are just a few of those questions I'd like to pose to the group.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Couldn't figure out how to get my hand raised. Sorry, so you said that she makes comments about how she liked her previous job better. What was that job, and what was the structure there, or what was expected?
Yeah, I think that what I've gathered from her is it was a church-based program, and she did have the freedom to do things her way. With us, if you're aware of the Eckers program, there's a lot of requirements there to have in place that tells you exactly how to do some certain things so that you can keep the grant and earn the grant. And so she has a bad attitude about that program, and she just really does. And she talks about having her own private preschool so that she can just do things her way. Does that help answer your question?
I have some
Yes,
questions.
it did. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I have some questions as well.
Okay.
So one of my questions are you a mandatory assigned coach for her, or are you being assigned by administration as a disciplinary measure for things and she's required to have you?
So the admin hasn't got to that point and gave her, like me, as to help coach specific things tailored to things that are she's struggling with. I'm more like, since we have the grant, I am a resource and a support system. So it's not something it's forced upon her.
Okay.
And we seem to have a pretty good relationship. Mostly I've tried to invest in getting to know her. It's just over the years, it's hard when people have a negative attitude. It's coming out more as she's been in the program longer.
Okay, so that answered that question. So it's voluntary. So
Yes.
that's important for me to know, because if something's forced on you and required versus voluntary. So then my next question is, I'm thinking, if you were my coach and you're coming in and you're watching me and you're saying, these are all the things you're doing wrong. If you're here for me, what do I want, rather than you telling me all the things I'm not doing? Has she come up with a list of, hey, we're meeting, these are the things I need from you as my coach, versus you saying, these are the things I think you need to fix? You're not doing the required parts of the program. There's disciplinary problems in the classroom. Her giving you a list of, you help me with, this is what I want.
Yes. So I don't take on any of that kind of role with her of telling her the things she's not doing right. That's more on the admin's level and the coaching I get to do. But we do have conversations about what she could try. And like, I was able to take her out to observe in other classrooms. She wanted to go to learn some better classroom management strategies. But then, she struggled to see, she just saw that she does those things. Anyways, so she didn't learn from the observations is what I'm trying to say. But what she does want from me, and which I can't always provide, is she wants me to help with the challenging behaviors. So when I go in there, it's tricky to coach, because I'm usually helping with the challenging behaviors and trying to help redirect them and have a positive experience for the kids.
So have you had her actually, oh, sorry. Have you had her actually write
Hey,
out?
Amy, I'm sorry, just so we have enough time in the breakout rooms, I can put Janet in your room, so if you have any more clarifying questions, we're gonna go out into breakout rooms just so we have enough time to discuss. And if you have any more clarifying questions, you can just send it to Faustine and we'll make sure Janet gets it. And
okay.
Does that work? Sorry to cut you off.
I can be in that group.
Okay.
Sorry, as we're breaking out, can I just ask, has she ever been recorded? Is that
Yes.
allowed?
Yes, she has been filmed. And because with the part of the teapot, that's part of this program with the behavior pyramid model.
So she's watched herself.
She is supposed to watch herself back. She just kind of laughed at some of the things that she saw on the video.
Okay, thanks.
That were alarming to me or someone else that watched it. She thinks it's funny.
Okay, we are going to move into breakout rooms. I have for the hub members who are leading the discussions as Chelsea, Sue, Betsy, Tara, Amy, and Teresa. And so if Chelsea, Sue, and Betsy, if you could handle the first question of helping this teacher, and then Tara, Amy Antolin, and Teresa, if you could handle the second question of helping the aides and the coworkers and the students. And feel free to take a minute to introduce yourselves and make sure you assign someone to take notes that we will be sending to Faustine and getting back to Jana. And just reach out if you have any questions. We will come back a couple minutes after 2:20. So for the last few minutes, we just wanted to go around and have one thing from each breakout room share a possible suggestion. So we will start with Chelsea and then do Sue and Betsy. So Chelsea, if you could share one thing your group discussed.
Yes, one thing we talked about was how the role of whether she has that buy-in or not is not the coach's responsibility, and that she should take that weight off of herself and really focus on coaching and not trying to solve all the other problems that are more the supervisor, their issue.
Absolutely, thank you. And then Sue.
We're going to just tag team on that same thought. It's very clear in the coaching models that a coach should not also be a supervisor or an administrator. And so our group said we really need to go in and clarify the roles and what the administrator, whomever that is, should do. And that's around enforcing the schedule, enforcing her presence in the classroom. That's an admin thing. The coach is meant to, you know, use that observation, that reflection, that help developing action plans. They're the mentor. They're not in that enforcement position. So I think that kind of just tags on to what Chelsea's group said. So clarify the roles, make sure that you have separate roles, and move about it that way.
Thank you, Sue. And then I'll have Betsy, and then after Betsy, we'll go over to Tara's group.
So it's the same thing, an admin needs to be involved, but also we just thought if you can find one tiny small thing that they're doing well and maybe sit down with them and talk to them about that one small thing that they're doing right and ask them about implementing, using that same strategy, like maybe in a different way, in a different time, in a different activity. So just finding the smallest things that you can find that are a positive that you can work with her as a coach.
Thank you.
And knowing Jana, she's probably already done that. But it was, you know, it's what we came up with in our group. So
I love that. Getting some positive reinforcement. Okay, Tara, and then we'll move over to Amy.
Right. We were talking about really finding out what is working and what's not working, and really having that team discussion with the aides involved, and trying to problem solve it as a team and building communication. And then Debbie, jump in. I know that she was taking some of the notes.
All right. So yeah, and I'm sure, Amy, that you've gone over the teapot or the results or that kind of thing with her, but we really talked about this would be the time to do some of those, you know, what do you like about your job? What do you feel is working? How can I support you in that job? And even though I feel like she's had lots of support, somewhere maybe she isn't feeling like she has. And this is really hard because also being in an elementary school where maybe you don't feel like you're being supported at the level of the K through 6th grade or whatever. Because I've had this experience where, you know, you're in an elementary school, some principals really embrace it and some don't. So I think that that's an added thing. She's had lots of personal things happen which impact our work too. But I really think having those open-ended questions where you're asking her about what's going well in her classroom, what do you feel like's not going well, and having her be the problem solver. It's not our job as a coach, really. We're there to mentor her along the way, but we need to be having those conversations. Well, that's not going well. Why do you think it's not going well? How could I support you with that? Asking those types of questions, which you probably already have, but I feel like is that right, Tara? That's kind of the thing that we were talking about.
Yeah, we talked about really it comes back down to the data and having that, you know, something to really look at so that the team can reflect and make goals.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then we'll just have Amy and Teresa, and if it could just be a really short thought.
We talked about maybe empowering the assistant teachers, like how we work on our friendship skills. We'll tell your friend you don't like it. We'll tell your friend we got a problem. And how do we have them kind of approach it in it, and creating that culture as a coach that the teachers, the assistant teachers feel safe to do so.
Thank you.
Oh, are you ready?
Go for it.
Okay. For us, we were really reflecting on like what might be behind her lack of satisfaction with her job right now. Is it because, you know, like what's different from her last job in this one, and really looking at that and figuring out for her what could be compromised, what could change to be maybe a little bit more like her old job, or just helping her to understand times are changing, and these, you know, we need to adapt, and how to support her in making those adaptations.
Thank you, Teresa. We are just about out of time. Thank you all so much for attending today, and I was able to listen into a little bit of your breakout groups and it sounded like amazing discussion. So just a reminder, if you took notes in your group, if you could send them to Faustine, I'll have her put her email in the chat. And just a reminder, if you could please fill out that survey, it's really short. And thank you all for coming today.